What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Thursday Night Dynasty Heat Seekers live show. I'm your host, Bryce Frazier. You could find me on Twitter at RotoHeat Bryce, but I'm way more active on RotoHeat's Dynasty Fantasy Football Facebook page. So go ahead and join that. Literally what I just said, RotoHeat Dynasty Fantasy Football. Great community, great places to ask for advice, see what's going out there in other leagues and things like that. And I'm joined by Dan, the man, Demo. How are we doing today, Demo?
Good, man. I'm excited to talk about, the rookie draft and see what happened and get your thoughts on all this stuff. Interested in all the moves that you might have been making in your leagues too.
Yeah, and I think like every year the draft just like didn't go the way anybody really planned. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there were some teams that definitely took positions that we kind of expected. But I feel like some of these, especially at the wide receiver area, like a lot of these players fell further than I thought they would. The running back, but I mean, both running backs were taken much earlier than I thought they would. So it was definitely an interesting draft, and we'll talk about some of the landing spots for those guys and what it maybe does to their fantasy value, if any. And this is very similar to the show. If you guys could like and subscribe, hit that notification bell. At noon on Thursdays, Rick and Thomas go live, and they talk about some of the risers and fallers of this draft, and they got to talk about guys that kind of went in the, maybe late guys they're drafting in like the late first of super flex leagues, or even second, third rounds, guys that maybe increased their value dropped, and why. So definitely go check out that video. We'll probably be talking a lot more about like some of the top assets today, and we'll sprinkle in some of the guys they talked about as well. But go ahead and definitely hit that like button. So the first thing I'll ask you, Demo, is who was the player that you thought landed in the perfect spot, and what did it do to their fantasy value in your opinion?
So, I mean, man, I kind of wanted to say a straight Bijan, right? Because he landed in a great spot. I don't know if it means it solidified. And you know what? It did solidify some things, right? Like we had Bijan probably we had him in our top 10. Maybe we had him near our top 5. But honestly, for me, after we're getting closer and closer to the actual games and preseason, it pushes him pretty high. He might be my number 1, number 3, top 3, one running backs dynasty wise. And I thought his landing spot was perfect. And it's one of the ones I really want to talk about because it was with head coach Arthur Smith. When he was coach with the Tennessee Titans, he had Derrick Henry, and he just ran him, and the offense ran through them, right? Didn't matter if they were up or down score wise. You run through Derrick Henry, and he's shown that tendency with Atlanta too. He didn't have quite the talent, but he got that production out of Tyler Algier. He did well with Cordarrelle Patterson the year before. They're going to continue running the ball a lot, so I think it just even solidifies that he's a really top running back dynasty asset. So that was one really good landing spot that I really liked for him. I don't know what you thought, if it changed anything for you in terms of Bijan, because he is the top asset. I'm kind of just curious what changed, if anything.
Yeah, I thought that if there was going to be any team that took Bijan inside the top 10, it would be the Falcons. I love the landing spot. The usage should be. I really want to compare like Bijan to what Saquon's rookie year could be, because people think, oh, he got drafted by a team that's not doing very well, but that doesn't really matter when you're getting 20 plus touches a game, which I could see Bijan getting. It looks like the Falcons are trying to bolster every single offensive skill position the past 3 drafts, which they have. So they're going to give Desmond Ridder a shot, and if he doesn't pan out this next draft classes, it seems to be so far at least like quarterback rich when it comes to the top 2 options. So if the Falcons find themselves in a situation to get one of those players, or they could always trade up if a team that just drafted a quarterback still ends up at the bottom, like similar to the Jacksonville Jaguars did the year before. I could see a team like Carolina ended up there. I would say the Texans, but they traded away their first overall pick next year. So I love the landing spot for Bijan Robinson. I would say one of my favorite landing spot for any of the players coming out would probably be Michael Mayer. And I'm sure you got a pretty strong opinion on this, being a Raiders fan. I love this landing spot for him. Easily steps in as the best tight end. With Josh McDaniels as the head coach, probably has a huge say in the offense if he's not calling the plays. With Jimmy G, who also has a stem from the Patriots where he's utilized the tight end his entire career. I think Michael Mayer, even though he's falling to the late first or early second in a lot of these drafts, I think he's going to be one of the best values you get in super flex leagues this upcoming season. So how do you feel about Michael Mayer landing with the Raiders?
No, I think that was a great landing spot too. He has that nickname of Baby Gronk, and he's kind of landed in Josh McDaniels' offense. So I think there's a good opportunity there to really start off really well. His blocking is really good too. I've talked a lot about him in one of the articles I wrote on RotoHeat. I like his blocking. I think he can improve a little bit, but that's fine, But he's a big dude. He can catch the ball. He can break tackles, pick up a couple yards and everything. So I think he's a good fit, and I think they'll utilize him really well there. So I was pleasantly surprised with the pick. He did, in my mind, he kept up with Dalton Kincaid. I had Dalton Kincaid a little bit above Mayer, and that was just through athleticism and all that stuff, which I think still matters. But in overall sense, the fact that Dalton Kincaid landed really well, I think he's going to move right into the second pass catching position with the Bills. That it might take him a year to really master the role or get more target share, but I think he'll get a chance to really grow and learn. And he's still learning right now. He only had one really good year in college, so he's shown he has a skill and a talent. So if he works hard and he continues to do well, he can really prove himself. So he moved up a lot. Dalton Kincaid far and above all the other tight ends. But then, with Mayer's landing spot being with the Raiders, I thought that was really good and kind of kept him really close. So I think, Dynasty Heat seekers can kind of choose what they want. Do they still want Mayer? Do they want Kincaid? I think they both have their pluses and minuses. So it kind of comes down to preference in terms of that. What did you think about all the tight ends yourself? Like, with Kincaid, or I think Sam Laporta landed pretty well. Just general, what your thoughts were on the tight end rookies.
Yeah, I mean, the top two landed in super ideal situations, and I think Kincaid will thrive with the Buffalo Bills because we saw Dawson Knox do pretty well there, and I really don't think he's that great, and I never did. I thought he just was an average tight end that seemed to be above average because he was in a great situation, and I think we're seeing that the Bills know that, and that's why they kind of drafted Kincaid, who has a lot more talent. Sam Laporta, I'll be honest, I was surprised that Laporta went before Mayer in the draft. It didn't make much sense to me. I thought Mayer would have been a perfect fit with the Lions as well. But obviously the situation is great. I'm seeing him fall more to the mid to late second round, which is probably where I'd probably consider him more mid second round pick. Pretty good value there because, again, the path to targets, the path just to be on the field is really, really high with him. With Brock Wright is the starting tight end for them. So Laporta being a second round draft pick probably steps in and immediately gets to be the starter. So that's a really good spot. And outside of those three, I'm really not too excited for any of the other ones. Luke Musgraves would probably be the next one. Again, has a pretty easy path to be on the field a lot, but I wasn't that big on Darnell Washington anyway, and he didn't land in really an ideal spot. And some of these other guys as well. Like I just, I'm willing to spend third and fourth round draft picks on, I'm sure. But when it comes to like the first or second round, there's really only three guys I'm looking at, and that's Laporta, Mayer, and Dalton Kincaid. With that being said, I know you're pretty big on Kincaid, and you had Mayer quickly before him. I'm still seeing them go late first, early second. Do you have and the most common wide receivers I'm seeing taken before them are Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. Are you taking any of these tight ends before any of those guys in super flex drafts?
No, those three wide receivers still going before the tight ends. So for me, at the 1.7, I can see people, reaching a little bit or being excited and picking up Kincaid there. I've considered it too. I don't have the 1.7, I have the 1.8. So I'm kind of honestly hoping he falls to the 1.8. But at 1.7, it's kind of like, what do you do? I think if Zach Charbonnet had landed much better spot, being right with Ken Walker, it kind of just pushed him down a little further. And once you do that, you're looking at the wide receiver options, and then who do you have there? You're kind of taking a stab at in the dark. Do you want Josh Downs? Do you want Mingo? Do you want Rashee Rice? Then it gets kind of a little murky there. So sometimes you go, hey, I'll go with the upside of Kincaid at 7 or 8, or if one of them goes at 8, maybe Michael Mayer falls to me, and I'll really consider him at 8 too. So that I don't know. That's where I would see. That's where I see in terms of the 3 wide receivers going. They're always just going to be better than the rest of the pack behind them. So they'll go in some sort of order amongst them. So for me, I have those right now. It's really close. I keep every day I wake up, I change my mind. But I'm one day I wake up, I'm like, I really like Flowers. Baltimore has a pretty good offense. They're gonna run. He's gonna get a chance to shine. He's young. He's gonna be there with Lamar. I don't think OBJ will last very long. Maybe a year. He's not much to compete with. Nor is Rashid Bateman. Yeah. So I don't. Rashad Bateman. I don't. I think he's inconsistent, and they'll let him go after the rookie year. They might decline his 5th year option, I would think. So I like Flowers right now, so right now I have Flowers, and then second I have Addison. Even though he's stuck behind Justin Jefferson, I think the fact that he's in a pretty pass heavy offense, that he'll get a good opportunity. Kind of reminds me of when Antonio Brown kind of just drew all the coverage. He was the best wide receiver. Juju Smith put up insane numbers. I don't know if they'll be able to throw as much as Ben did during that time, but Addison's a little more talented, so I think they have a pretty good chance of being fine just right behind Justin Jefferson there. So that's how I have those 2. And then, and the Quentin Johnston, I was never really a big fan of. His landing spot's fine. He's someone that was stashed on my taxi squad for a couple of years, and hopefully he'll, have a good year next year. I think maybe if he develops well, I wouldn't hold out any hope for him doing well this year. But that's my 3 in order. It goes Flowers, Addison, Quentin. I don't know what you thought about those 3, or were you willing to move some of those tight ends ahead of those guys?
No, out of those 3, no. I would put him above Quentin Johnston. I would honestly, when it comes to it, it could come down to team need when I put in Mingo in there, because I really kind of value maybe them a little bit better. But I also am not a big fan of Quentin Johnston, and I mean their landing spot seems to be really, really good.
Yeah.
But the Chargers draft the same type of wide receiver, it seems like now, like every other year. So I just don't like the talent. I think they really, really missed out on Zay Flowers there. Obviously, we're not talking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who I think we both have above all of these guys, of course. And so my order would probably be the same. You had Zay Flowers, which I'm glad, because we're like one of the few. I feel like there's not many people that has Zay Flowers as the number 2. But I'll just, it's like beating a dead horse. The first thing I look at when these wide receivers are coming out of the NFL or coming out of college into the NFL is route running. And I think Zay Flowers has the best route running. The only concerning thing about Zay Flowers is they asked him which teams he was excited to play in the AFC North, and he didn't know which teams were in the AFC North, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. It feels like that's something you should know being about to be a professional athlete. So that was a little strange, but still. I really like his route running, and then I'm going to put Jordan Addison right behind him, and then I'm probably putting Mingo behind them when it comes to the wide receivers. And I'm debating on those tight ends around Mingo. I think I'd address team need there. Going back to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I think I got to talk about this because it's kind of mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's not mind-boggling, but I think it's definitely strange that pre-draft, I feel like there was a consensus that when it came to everybody besides the quarterback, it went Bijan, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and then Gibbs.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to see a lot of these people are preferring Gibbs over Jaxon Smith-Njigba. That's super strange to me. Like, they love the landing spot and everything, but I don't know if I do love this landing spot. But we've now seen 2 years in a row a similar skill set running back in DeAndre Swift, and I get that he's been injured. But even when he was healthy, his usage was really strange. And he was unhappy with it. Not only did they bring in who I think is a better running back than Jamal Williams, especially in short yardage with David Montgomery, who is a tackle breaking machine, especially between the tackles. I just see him being the upgrade of Jamal Williams when it comes to being a vulture, and Jahmyr Gibbs is coming. I feel like it's coming out of college with a little bit more hype than DeAndre Swift, but I feel like that talent level is really not that different. Are you putting Jahmyr Gibbs above Jaxon Smith-Njigba like some of these other people are nowadays, or are you still riding with Jaxon Smith-Njigba as the number 2 skill position player coming out of this draft outside of a quarterback? And are you high on Gibbs as well? Because I guess I might be lower than most people. I still have him as the number 3 option by a pretty decent margin, but I am easily wanting Jaxon Smith-Njigba above Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's pretty funny that you mentioned it, and because that was the exact topic I was going to bring up next. So I was just going to be like, okay. You mentioned it, and I was like, what do you thought about between the 2 and the 3rd spot? And yeah, welcome to the strange world. I can't believe it, but I'm struggling with it, and it's weird on this side, but I do have Gibbs above JSN. I love JSN. I thought he was awesome. I was like, man, this is perfect. This guy's awesome. He's a great player. And he's talented. He's going to last a couple, long time. He's going to have a good career. But man, when Detroit Lions made that aggressive push, an awkward push to go into 12th overall and pick up Jahmyr Gibbs, it was just insane. It was mind-boggling to me that they did that. And I can't, I don't know if they have a great draft record of drafting running backs, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is different. He, when you're drafting that high of your running backs, they tend to produce. They've always been pretty productive in the past, and I think right now, I have him second, and that's only because of the landing spot of not only because of the landing spot, but where Gibbs landed, but also where JSN landed. Everything I'm hearing is just negative about it. Just like Pete Carroll said, they're not really going to change how their offense is run right now. So they've always had kind of 2 wide receivers out there, really kind of heavy run heavy kind of offense. So I don't know where that puts JSN. So that kind of immediately is like, oh, he's going to get as much opportunity his first year. That they've signed DK Metcalf for a really long time. They got an extension on him. Tyler Lockett has, I think, 2 or 3 years left, but or they say like 1 year and he could be gone. But he seems like such a loyal Seahawks person that he would never leave, and team kind of likes him, and he the way he plays, he doesn't take many hits. So unless they really decide to go pass oriented and have a 3rd wide receiver out there with JSN like in the slot, which would be awesome, it's just hard to get on the field. He's probably more talented than them, maybe really competitive with them, but just loyalty to those guys, it's hard to really get them off the field. I think that maybe if one of them gets injured, right, there's a good opportunity there that could pop up. So I just see a difficult time for JSN to get on path. He's just kind of stuck behind 2 good receivers. Just the way that their team is set up and the way that they're really focusing on the run. I just don't think the opportunity is there immediately. It's hard to foresee it maybe a couple of years. So give me the quick, burst of Gibbs. He'll be kind of like if it was a redraft league, it feels like it'd kind of be like your hero RB strategy where you just have one great running back and then, you'd have someone else. For me, I wouldn't mind filling him as a hero or just like try to draft him really late and get him in because I think he's going to be really good first year. I think I've heard some projected at like 100 passes based off of DeAndre Swift's usage. He had like 70 passes in his limited snaps, limited games, all that stuff that when you kind of project it out to something normal, like, decent amount of snaps, decent amount of games, you end up with like 100 targets, So when you're in the 100 target range for a wide running back, even if you're getting like 5-7 carries a game, if you're making like 7-6 catches a game and you're ripping off like 60-70 yards and you're quick enough that you can get a touchdown here and there, if they get that kind of usage, then I gotta take it. And it's weird, it is odd because I usually draft around wide receivers all day every day, but for now, I mean, luckily one of my drafts is happening super late, so maybe at that point there's more information that
you're gonna find out. You're gonna find out JSN is gonna be on the field all the time by that. I really think that we're gonna see him just take over in camp, and he'll be on the field more than Tyler Lockett. I truly do think that. I hope you're wrong, obviously on it, but it wouldn't surprise me because Pete Carroll does seem like that loyalty kind of guy, where he would like leave Tyler. Because I feel like Pete Carroll's already got. I mean, I can't imagine he's a head coach for much longer. He's getting much older. I thought he was on the chopping block this last season. I feel like if they didn't do good this last season, he'd be gone right now. But I'm gonna stick with JSN because I don't know. I feel like the Jahmyr Gibbs is the same old song and dance with the Lions. I mean, all the way back from their last running back they took in the first round was Javid Best. So we're pretty close to the name too. Again, super speedy guy, and he was super efficient. But it just seems like when they put in this high draft capital in these running backs, they have the unfortunate circumstances of them getting hurt, which obviously you can't draft with that thinking in mind, especially a guy that doesn't have a history of it. But I'm just not trusting the usage in this Dan Campbell offense, where I feel like when they get inside like the 5 to 10 yard line, he's going to put a guy in that is best suited for scoring the touchdown, which seems to be David Montgomery, who's more of a hard-nosed runner. But Jahmyr Gibbs has Austin Eckler upside, and that's something I can't just like ignore. He truly does have that same upside when it comes to the way he plays the game. So I get it.
It's scary drafting the 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah, so we got that question. So Michael, thanks for asking this. Is Gibbs worth the 1.2 in Superflex? This is an easy no for me. Yeah. But now I'm curious what you would say here.
Yeah, in the Superflex, I've seen it happen a couple times now. It's starting to get pushed that way. I think, for whatever reason, these quarterbacks are getting slid down just a tad, and I've seen it. Is it worth it? Man, I might. I think it depends a little bit more on need, to be honest, right? It depends a little more on need. These quarterbacks are too valuable, Yeah, I haven't thought about it, but kind of going through the thought process now, I don't think he's quite there yet. I've seen it happen in a couple drafts, but it's kind of really when they're kind of set at the quarterback. They have Trevor Lawrence and Mahomes or something, and they're sitting there at the 2 spot. They're not going to pick Anthony Richardson. They're not, they feel pretty good. They're going to be like, all right, we'll go Gibbs. Maybe in that kind of situation, I'd do it, but overall, probably not.
Yeah, so. I would say JSN is worth the 1.2. I would say that Gibbs is solidified as of right now. Gibbs has solidified himself as the 1.6. I don't think anybody moves behind him of the top 5 that I have, being the 3 quarterbacks, Bijan and JSN, and then there's nobody behind him that's even close to surpassing him right now in my mind either. So he's pretty solidified in that 1.6 spot for me personally. But it's just interesting to see people's reaction to him getting drafted. I think that Lions was it the owner who got real pumped when they drafted him? That dude that smacked the table real hard. I feel like people are getting pumped up from that video as well. But he did it 2 years in a row. So so another guy that I really like his landing spot, and I feel like this is a guy he's drafted in the second round, and I've seen him in the early second, and I've seen him in the mid second so far. Jalen Hyatt. So the video, did you see the video of him in the Dallas Cowboy Scout?
Yeah.
That was awesome. I immediately became a fan because basically the Cowboy Scout, if any of you haven't seen it, the Cowboy Scout is talking to Jalen Hyatt and says, you know what skill set you have? And he's like, he knew what the guy was going to say. He's like, what skill set is that, coach? He's like, your speed. He's like, but I can run routes too. So Jalen Hyatt is not happy. And then he gets drafted by the Giants. So now that video, I mean, that's got to be fuel to the fire. You get to play a team twice a year when one of the scouts said all you got is speed. I mean, that's an amazing. He's in an amazing landing spot to get on the field. I mean, who does he have to beat out? Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, he doesn't have to beat out anybody, really. I mean, you got Darius Slayton there, right? Isn't that their number one? Yeah. Slayton, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson. He could beat out Shepard for sure.
Yeah.
So Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton is who you're fighting for targets. I mean, there's not many better situations.
Waller, tight end. And he's super old. I mean, he's getting up there in age.
Right. So, but at least Darren Waller doesn't affect his ability to be on the field.
Right.
So Jalen Hyatt couldn't have landed in a much better situation when it comes to opportunity. I mean, I'm trying to think of other teams out there where like the path to getting on the field is much easier. And I could just name like the Patriots, and then I can't even, like, maybe the Panthers, which we saw Mingo go to. There's only like maybe 3 or 4 teams out there where a wide receiver could have landed in a better spot. Was Jalen Hyatt drafted in the second round, or he was a 3rd round pick?
Yeah,
he and Cedric Tillman went back-to-back teammates.
Yeah. Yep.
What are your thoughts? I know you were big on Hyatt prior to the draft. You wanted to see him to go to Kansas City, which they drafted a wide receiver. Do you like this landing spot for Jalen Hyatt?
I do, yeah. It's kind of for the same reasons that you're talking about. There's just a mess of wide receivers. There's like all pretty okay, good wide receivers. Some folks have been there for a while, but Jalen Hyatt at least brings a lot of explosion and speed to the team. I think Darius Slayton was one of their faster ones, and he was running like a 4.7 or something. He was super slow for wide receiver. So there's definitely a good opportunity there. The fact that coach is Dable, I think it really will lend itself to being able to kind of try to utilize his strengths, but also I think there's a good chance for him if he really does show and prove the world wrong. Everyone, like you said, he's getting criticized for not being able to run routes. He's going to get an opportunity to do that with the Giants, and if he really studies it and learns it well, and spends his time at the craft, there's a good opportunity there. So I do like the chance. It'll be a good player to kind of follow and see what happens just through preseason, during the preseason games, and just through the season as well. I think he is one of those kind of late. He might develop slowly as we go along, but it'd be awesome. I could see pretty good finishes toward the end just because the offense is really nice. I think they're coming along, and Danny Dimes, he needs somebody, so why not him? So yeah, it's a great landing spot. Probably needs to bulk up a little bit to hang with the defenders, but good chance, good opportunity. It's something that at least gives them hope, and I do like it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the only knock would be the NFC East does have some tough defenses, and especially when it comes to the secondaries with the Eagles and the Cowboys. But nonetheless, the path to targets is really easy. So before we get into like a draft, I had a super flex rookie draft that actually just ended this afternoon. It started the day after the draft ended. And we'll maybe look at some things on there. But before I do, there's only a couple more people I really wanted to talk about, especially guys that are drafted in the first round. So let's just go to the quarterbacks, who I wanted to go to. Out of the top 3 quarterbacks, being I think pretty consensus, Richardson, Young, and Stroud. Did they land where you expected them to land? I know Richardson didn't, because the day of the draft talk, I feel like both of us might have been relatively convinced that Will Levis might have been taken number 4 overall, and he slid further than I think pretty much the whole world thought. Any of these landing spots for these quarterbacks maybe cause them to edge out another quarterback in your mind, or do the rankings stay the same? And what are those rankings?
Yeah, so I have Anthony Richardson still first, and then I think I have I've been going back and forth between Stroud and Young, but I still have Stroud a little bit ahead, and then I have Young. So I think all of them landed in really good landing spots. I really like Anthony Richardson's landing spot a lot, just because the fact that he gets to go with Shane Steichen. He was the one that was coached for Jalen Hurts, and he also coached for Justin Herbert. So he's been with good quarterbacks, and he can kind of be able to show his flexibility in terms of being able to coach different types of quarterbacks, and they put up great numbers. So I think there's a good opportunity there for Anthony Richardson to develop over there. When you Colts grab someone like a nice young rookie quarterback, I think they do a pretty good job of really looking into it and doing well. They haven't had too many opportunities, but Andrew Luck was obviously a great one that came out, and then Peyton Manning. So it'd be kind of cool to see kind of the same continued legacy. He still has a super upside that you want in fantasy. So we always talk about the length of the quarterbacks, but he'll be a little more short-lived. But it's a pretty good landing spot, so we'll see if they're able to really utilize his skill more as a runner than a passer for sure, and just kind of see how that works out in terms of fantasy points. So I keep him still really high. Next, I have Stroud still there, and that's just because of Young's concern with the height. That's always just kind of been there with me, and with the height, there's always more defenders are a lot taller. The D line's a lot taller. They can kind of get a sense of when the balls are being thrown a little quicker, so they're getting their hands up. So that kind of stuff little concerns me a little bit. Just stepping into a young Carolina offense, they don't have a number one. They have Shark and Thielen, which are good, solid receivers. They got Mingo, which is a really good opportunity for him, just being able to step right in and maybe become their number one. He's athletic enough, and if he learns the craft of being a wide receiver a little more, I think he has a great chance. So that's kind of where it kind of falls in. That's kind of where I thought that Young would be good, but just, kind of a little bit of more fluctuation, right? I like Stroud still because I think he's like a franchise quarterback. Houston doesn't have any good wide receivers. Might be a little rough this first year, but he's shown that he has some wheels. If they decide to run a little bit, that'd be kind of cool to see. So I think he's built more like a quarterback too. So I just kind of prefer him. Kind of left him in that order. Will Levis, I thought he'd go higher in the draft. I was never a big fan of him, but there were just all sorts of rumors and just all sorts of crazy talk. Like bets were going up to where Will Levis was going to be drafted by the Panthers, and Stroud was going to drop down to like 12 and things. I think it was just all over the map, just all sorts of misinformation. But with Will Levis, he did drop, and then they finally grabbed him with the Titans, which is a good spot. You know, Tannehill is been a nice veteran quarterback there, but I don't think he's going to be too long there. So eventually, Will Levis will take over, and you know, if Derrick Henry's still running for the team, he might have a ceiling capped, but kind of, you know, that's kind of where it's at. So for me, the landing spots didn't move the needle enough to change the order. So I have AR, Stroud, Young.
Yeah, my order did change a little bit because I'm not gonna lie, I was bigger on Levis. I had him as the number 3 behind Richardson. But these NFL teams and these scouts know more than me, and I'm not, too proud to admit that. So if they don't see Levis as a first round talent, there's an obvious reason for that. So I'll bump him down to the number 4 spot. I will still keep him in my Superflex drafts as like the number 7 player drafted behind Jahmyr Gibbs, because I still think a starting quarterback has this, like, it's the and his opportunity is going to be there after this year. I think sitting for a year or even half a year, depending on how the Titans start this season off, is super ideal for him. So I do like his landing spot a lot. I don't think could have got much better. I've kind of transferred to a 1A, 1B type of scenario with Richardson and Stroud, meaning that if I had say I had the second pick in 4 drafts and I really, really needed quarterback, I would take 2. I would take Richardson, and 2 of them I'd take Stroud. I think I'd want to spread out my assets there. And then really, really close behind them would be Bryce Young. I would be happy with either of them. Like, if I had 2 top 4 picks or 2 top 3 pick, if I had to pick 2 and 3, I would take JSN and Stroud, or, I would take like a wide receiver, and then whatever quarterback fell to me at like the 4 or 5 spot, I'd be completely happy with is kind of what I mean. So I really like those 3, and then Will Levis not far behind. And really the reason where Richardson's jumped up on my draft board is his landing spot with the Colts. I don't think I said it, but I was thinking it prior to the draft. If there's any team that I'd want to draft Richardson, it would be the Colts at 4, because of their new head coach in Steichen and how he utilized Jalen Hurts. And there's already been reports that he is going to be utilized similar to Jalen Hurts, and I really, really like that for him. I don't think he should be a guy that's running it as much as Lamar and Justin Fields have in their past. So the quarterbacks are there for me. Would you take Will Levis like right after the top 6 guys, or are you taking maybe some of those wide receivers we talked about earlier above him?
Yeah, I'm still taking those wide receivers way ahead. I was kind of never, I just didn't really like him, and the fact that he fell to the second round kind of was like, that's where I would have probably drafted him too. Even in Superflex, I'd let him fall to me mid-second. By that point, I know he's gone. There's gonna be people that still like him, still have faith, and if they're willing to wait a year, like you said, half a year, then they'll be fine with Will Levis. And he has a good arm. If he can develop, he can be a really good top-notch quarterback. I'm just kind of out on him, so it's hard for me to probably end up with a good landing spot for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, first of all, I feel like, I know it's a conspiracy, but if people don't think that Vegas pumped out all these conspiracy theories about certain players falling and getting drafted 1 overall, I mean, it's obvious that there were, and the betting odds were changing so fast. Like, that's just a little suspicious to me. I never bid on it. I really thought Houston was still going to take Stroud number 2 overall. So I didn't really fall for it, because I feel like this happens. Like we talked about it last week. It happens every single year that rumors come out that someone else is going to, and it's always last minute too. People trying to capitalize on some great odds for betting or something like that. So,
I would have lost the house. Yeah, I was one of those. I fell for that. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah, it just wouldn't have made sense for Houston, in my opinion, unless it was clear that they were going to tank. And now they have no incentive to tank because they lost their first overall pick next year, but they still have the Browns, which is still means they got decent draft capital. Yeah. With that being said, I think it'd be interesting to bring up this draft I was talking about. So let me add it to the stream here. And I think there's a lot of things in here that, we kind of talked about, the first 5 picks here. So you said, Gibbs, that you were kind of debating it there for a second at the 1-2. Are you taking Gibbs above maybe, I know you got Richardson as your top ranked quarterback. Are you taking Gibbs above Stroud or Young?
No. When you I think he's landed probably right where I'd put him. Maybe I'd put one spot higher with JSN at 1.6, have Jahmyr Gibbs at 1.5. Yeah, when you put it out on the draft board, it's fun to kind of talk about it, but it's totally like a different feel when you actually see the draft board and you're like, who am I picking up? It's hard for me to say that I'm pushing Gibbs above any of those 3 quarterbacks for sure, even in a super flex.
Yeah, I agree. I wish
Yeah,
Sleeper would make their draft page just a little bit skinnier so we get the whole picture in there. I think this, I think the first 6 picks went roughly as planned. As you see, I took Jaxon Smith-Njigba above some of these quarterbacks, but that's also because I had the 5th pick here and I was again, like a scenario I talked about earlier, I would have been happy with either Young or Stroud. So I didn't want to pass up on the top level, who I think is the second best skill position player in Jaxon Smith-Njigba at the 3 spot, which everyone was like, what are you doing? You said you're going to take Stroud, but then I thought about it and I was like, I'm not going to let Jaxon Smith potentially drop. So the back half of this draft is where it gets kind of interesting. So I feel like this is what you would have thought Levis would have, would be falling all the way down at the end of the first round, which is funny because the guy who has that pick is a Titans fan, and even he didn't really feel good about taking it. But I feel like every year he doesn't like the Titans draft, it seems like. But the biggest surprise to me was Zach Charbonnet at the 9 spot. And this guy, I think, probably took him because he is really weak at running back. So I feel like he was kind of panicking and maybe like just took the highest drafted in real life running back in Zach Charbonnet. I think he really missed a lot of value on some of these other players that went in the early second or even behind him. Which pick, I'm assuming that's probably your least favorite pick in this round as well, or would Quentin Johnston be a pick that you hate more, which just happened to be the same guy?
And yeah,
or no?
Yeah,
it is.
So after the 6, after that, I would have 7, 8, 9 would be for me. I would have had Flowers up there, Addison, and then and then when you were talking about Quentin Johnston, when I was just ranking those 3, I kind of considered, how far does Quentin Johnston fall for me too? Probably a little further down too, and then I'd probably have my tight ends there. But the Charbonnet went a little early in my opinion too. I think I've seen him fall to even the mid-second just because once you do get past around 8, 9 or so, it just becomes a mess. It's just everyone just grabs whoever they kind of like, and you kind of run with it at this point. So, for me, Charbonnet would be too high at 1.9. I'd have, like we said, talk about Flowers, Addison, Quentin Johnston probably a little further down, and just have my tight ends in there. Kincaid, I'd put Kincaid above Mayer, and Levis would, for me, would fall further.
Yeah, I would probably agree with most of that. I would take Zay Flowers there at the 7th spot as well, followed by Jordan Addison. And then I think I would take, I talked about earlier, I'd probably put the 2 tight ends right after that. And then after those tight ends, it's like, okay, so let's just say in theory, let's just say not in any specific order, but 7, 8, 9 is Flowers, Addison, Levis, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Mayer, and then Kincaid. Who do you think would be the best value at that 12 spot? So we'd have like guys like Zach Charbonnet, Rashee Rice, Mingo, Hyatt, Laporta, Spears. Which guy maybe do you think should be maybe in that 12 spot?
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of messy, and I think that's probably the good breaking point. We know that's where everyone kind of looks at the talent, kind of looks about the same. You kind of balance out and kind of figure out where the landing spots were. For me, I have Jonathan Mingo. I kind of liked him a little bit early on in the draft too, just because again, you're like looking around, you're saying who's the big-bodied wide receiver that could be an alpha, and he landed, like you said, in one of the great spots where there is a chance with the Panthers. So, and it's gonna be kind of cool just seeing him grow with Young and get a chance to really shine. So. At the 12th spot, I kind of like Mingo. I think it gives him a good opportunity to, become the best wide receiver in this class. So people always have those AJ Brown vibes because of the old misconnection, the size,
and second round pick. Yeah.
Yep. And there's a good chance of that. I don't think he has quite the same skill set or anything, but he definitely can put up points like that maybe. So we'll see.
Yeah. I agree. I'd put Mingo as like my number 12 asset. I think he's earned himself a first round pick, very last pick in the first round when it comes to maybe my personal rankings. And then again, it just stays messy at the early second. So like early second, you got guys like Rashee Rice, Jalen Hyatt. Hendon Hooker fell all the way at the early third for me, which was mind-boggling in a super flex league. But I put maybe him in that tier of like players, Laporta, and then like all these wide receivers. I feel like that were taken in the second round, maybe even some in the third. Where are you putting where are you ranking like some of these early second round picks?
Yeah.
Like let's just say the next three best players that you think you'd be taking early second round.
Early second round, I got I think Kendre Miller. A lot of people are really high on him, but I'd have him in my early second round. He lands in a spot where he's going to be with Kamara when he comes back, or if he's suspended. But they've still signed Jamal Williams there for 3 years, so he'll be vulturing touchdowns. And they don't really have they have Derek Carr as their quarterback, and we'll kind of see where that all goes. I think they can produce some points, but it's a crowded backfield, so it might take a couple of years for Kendre Miller to develop. He was never the pass catching back in college, so I don't quite see that role, being formed while Jamal Williams and Kamara, who is the pass catching back there. So that's why I kind of have him a little lower, but I think he's talented enough. And if there are those suspended games, whatever that range may be, he'll get an opportunity to show himself. He may be able to carve out something more permanent. So I have him really high up there. He's one that I really like. Devin Achane I think should be a little higher as well. He lands in one of the really good spots with Miami Dolphins. They love speed. They don't mind having the smaller guys in Waddle and Tyreek. I don't think he'll be able to handle the kind of in between tackles, the first down, second down, but he carve out a pass catching role. He caught a lot of balls during college too, so I think there's a good opportunity there. So I have Kendre Miller. Oh, I probably have Zach Charbonnet still kind of up there. He'd probably be above Kendre Miller and Devin Achane. Zach Charbonnet lands in a really tough spot with Seattle Seahawks, with Ken Walker, but they like to run the ball. I think there's a pretty good opportunity that he can carve out a role. Ken Walker never really caught many balls in when he was with Seattle or in college, so there is a pass catching role there. If they can really change that offense around, I think they can really shine. They have JSN there. They can plug in Charbonnet. They can go high powered offense if they need to. If Gino can sustain them all, they got the coaches, I think, that can bring out the talent. So I still have Charbonnet there. That I still think he's talented enough and can carve out a role that I have him above Kendre Miller and Devin Achane. But those are my next three options at 2-1, 2-2, 2-3. I think they'll provide an opportunity during the season where you're going to be able to start them once or twice a year, and that's good enough for me in my first year rookies drafted in the second round. Kind of rough, especially this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I think when it gets to this early second, you could kind of see what your dynasty roster looks like, because I kind of have like 6 guys here that I like kind of value relatively similar. So it's like if I'm weak at running back, I'm going to target some of these running backs like Kendre Miller. I really like Tyjae Spears, and I like Roschon Johnson.
That's true.
Not in that order. I'd probably put Roschon above all of them. Followed by Kendre and then Spears. I don't know how I feel about any Miami running back right now. I feel like that's just going to be our running back by committee for the foreseeable future. And then if I'm, maybe if I'm needing wide receiver, I'm looking at Rashee Rice, Quentin Johnston, and Jalen Hyatt. And I'd probably put Quentin Johnston above Rashee Rice and Jalen Hyatt, with Rice and Hyatt very closely behind. Because, again, it's hard not to like any receiver that Kansas City invests in. I feel like now people in dynasty communities have pumped the brakes on anybody Kansas City has drafted, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire and now Sky Moore have kind of bit a lot of people, because they were first round draft picks in even super flex leagues the past whenever years they were drafted. Last year was Sky Moore, and then I think 3 years ago for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So maybe people will pump the brakes, which is why you're seeing Rashee Rice fall into the second round, even though he was drafted in the second round. I think, was Sky Moore drafted in the first round last year, or was he a second round pick?
I think it was a second round pick, but early.
He and I think Rashee Rice was relatively early too. Did they not trade up for him?
I want to say they I think they did. I don't know. Either way, I know Patrick Mahomes was in love with him and was the one that said, let's grab Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I mean, every quarterback's going to say that about the wide receiver they bring to their teams. You know, they're never ever going to say anything bad. So I think when it comes to like those 6 guys, for me personally, I think you can draft for team need because I'm not really valuing them that far apart. And then after them, I'm probably putting like Sam Laporta right there with some other guys following Hendon Hooker in the mid second as well. In this second round, which pick is your favorite and which pick is your least favorite when it comes to value?
I think Skinner grabbed probably the best value here. Skinner, the Kendre Miller late. To me, that's like a late second. I'd have him, kind of really high up in the early second round, just because we talked about it. So I really like that pick there. That was pretty good value there.
I think John Zidane got up. Yeah, look how many trades there were in this league.
Okay.
John Zidane got the second,
okay.
Good pick. And then
Sorry,
who's your
Skinner.
least favorite? I feel like we might have the same least favorite here.
Least favorite would be Marvin Mims. I was never too high on him, so I'd let him go to the third. Rashee Rice. No, that's a little. For me, if you're taking a look at the value, I'd say Rashee Rice at 2-1. It seems a little rich too. I know some people are really high on him, some people are low on him. I'm on your side. I don't really trust the Chiefs being able to draft well and kind of getting burned in the past. That I kind of want to avoid him. Early second's a little rich for me. I think Mahomes can just throw at anybody, and Kelsey's there, so Kelsey's going to be, and he dominates the target. So it's just hard to really carve out a really solid role behind him. That early second for me with Rashee Rice seems a little rich.
Right, that's fair. I think my least favorite is probably Darnell Washington at the end of the second. I think he's more of like a mid third to late third. And my favorite pick would probably be would be Mingo at the 2-3, especially since I think he's a first round pick. With Kincaid probably closely following that as well. Yeah.
But it really does show you the versatility and like kind of people just have values. Just they're all pretty close. So I mean, anytime you talk about it, it's like that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I missed Roshan. I would have put Roshan kind of up there too. I really like him. So there's a pass catching role with the Bears too right now. Herbert and Foreman aren't really known for catching. So Roshan can do it all. Can pass block. Can catch. Can do everything. So if he really shows himself, he can really move up the ranks too.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Roshan, let's quickly, we're just kind of filling in the last like 10, 15 minutes here. This third round, I guess same question. What pick do you like the most, and which pick, do you like the least? And why you're thinking about that, some of these third round guys for me, I haven't done a ton of research on, but when it comes to like, I know you were big on this fourth pick here. Do you hate that landing spot? What's his name?
Israel Abanikanda. Yeah.
Abanikanda. Yeah, landing spot sucks, right? For him.
Oh, terrible. Yeah. You have Michael Carter there, and you have Zonovan Knight, which are really good, backup running backs, and you have Brees. So he's not going to see light of day. I mean, unless there's massive injuries ahead of him.
Yeah, so he's got probably. Luckily, funny enough, the guy that drafted him is a Jets fan, which obviously why he's on his radar. Who owns Brees Hall and I think Michael Carter. So he's like super handcuffing the Jets backfield, which is fine. And it's a third round pick. So it's not like you're not. This is the third, fourth, and fifth round are the best because there's like no pressure to hit or miss here. They're all dart throws, and there's only wins or neutrals. You don't really lose if you miss on a third round pick. There's some of my favorite picks in these super flex drafts because like you don't care if you miss, and it's just like getting gold if you hit. So now that you've looked at them, what's maybe your favorite pick here in the third round when it comes to value?
I thought your third round pick of Hendon Hooker was really good. Did you move up in the draft to kind of pick him up there before he fell more, or was it one of those picks from early on?
So it's kind of messed up, but I originally owned the second overall pick. And I had some offers from people to move up to take Anthony Richardson. Well, my dad had the third overall pick, and I told him like, hey, listen, I'm not I've got offers for the second. I was even contemplating taking Richardson here. I did think about it because I'm in the spot to get Stroud in another league. And like I said, I'd like to kind of maybe 50-50 those guys. I was like, I'll let you get your guy, but throw a third rounder in it just to move up a spot and I'll move back a spot. And he did. So that's how I got that 3-3.
Nice.
And afterwards, just to mess with him, because they did really have offers, I was like, I was never taking Richardson there. And he was like, I can't believe you do that. It was so funny. But this is a dog-eat-dog world. This isn't a free league. There's no etiquette when it comes to trading or talk. So so it ended up being great value for me getting this. So no, I didn't trade up for it at all. It's just a pick I acquired when my name came on the clock at 2 overall. So ended up being a really, really good value there at the 3 spot.
It's a good little story about when you're doing trades with folks, just first of all, be cutthroat about it.
Yeah.
But then more so, you got to be able to, if you pick up a little third round picks, they can turn into something, especially super flex where you're picking up a quarterback. There's a good chance Hendon Hooker could do real well. So third round, Roschon Johnson's another really good one. I thought that, be able to pick up there, especially in the third round. I think he would have done a lot better if he got it in the second round. I think he's being more drafted in the second round. So even at the late first. So, I thought getting third round value for him was really nice. Kayshon Boutte, I think, is another one that kind of stands out. I know you were kind of high. I know you're like a resident Patriots fan. What do you think about Kayshon Boutte and his landing spot there and being drafted where he was?
I would say this is the best value for this round outside of maybe my Hendon Hooker pick. I really think I saw in the other league, Kayshon Boutte went at 212. So I'm seeing people take him at the end of the second round now, or at least I've seen one part of it, and it makes complete sense, right? Like, it's kind of funny because last year Tyquan Thornton was drafted in the second round, and I feel like he was getting drafted in the 4th round of rookie picks, and now Kayshon Boutte is drafted in the 6th round and is getting drafted late second and Dynasty. In Dynasty leagues, and it makes sense on why he's being drafted late second because again, like Jalen Hyatt, like Jonathan Mingo, the path to get on the field and be a part of and just the potential for production is easier than all these other rookies. Like Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the most talented guy in this draft class, but Kayshon Boutte has an easier path to see more targets than him just because of the talent around him. I mean, who's he got to beat out? I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster is our number 1 receiver, which is not good, which is not great. And then it's Kendrick Bourne and Tyquan Thornton. Those are guys that he has to beat out. And it seems like at one point, this guy was touted as a first-round draft pick in the real NFL draft at wide receiver. So he's fallen quite a bit. So that landing spot and the value that Castle got at 3.9 is huge. I was almost hoping that at the beginning of this third round, the guy that had back-to-back picks would take Roschon Johnson and Hendon Hooker just so I could take Kayshon Boutte at the 3-3. But I said, if he lets any of these guys go, I got to pick him up there at the 3. I got to pick whoever he doesn't at the 3-3, and he left Hendon Hooker there hanging for me. But yeah, I love Kayshon Boutte at the 3.9. Super, super optimal situation for him to see a lot of targets. What about you? What do you like the landing spot for him? I guess it's hard not to, right?
Yeah. I think it was one of the better landing spots possible too. It's either gonna be boom or bust with Kayshon Boutte anyway. So it's in the best opportunity with the Patriots if he puts his head on straight and kind of buys into the system. I think it's one of those opportunities that he can produce. This is the first time where I think you have the talent. You just got, or with the wide receivers that Patriots have had, it's he's probably been the most talented. Now it's a question of being able to transfer it into work ethic and turn it into something. You've seen Jakobi Meyers. He's less talented, put in the work effort, turned out to be a pretty decent wide receiver, I think. Fairly talented, but he wasn't, really high.
Yeah, he's an undrafted free agent.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So, yeah. But, so I think he falls into a good system. If he buys in and does well, there's good high upside opportunity for him.
And it's almost a death sentence if he doesn't. Like if he doesn't buy into the Patriots, they're gonna release him, and I feel like nobody's gonna touch him. Like if you can't get your head on straight and you're not serious about football, the Patriots are gonna dump you. They're not gonna deal with all, and especially since they have no draft cap, they essentially have like minimal draft capital invested in him. If he doesn't keep his, if he's not right above the shoulder, above the shoulder pads, then he's not going to get an opportunity. So. I liked what he said when he got drafted. It's a dream come true. Like he's ready to work. And I feel like sometimes it's a humbling experience for some of these guys that maybe get a big head in college when they're touted as a number one. But he and Jaxon Smith-Njigba a week prior to last year, a week from a year from now, or a year ago from now, he was put up there with Jaxon Smith-Njigba as a top wide receiver coming out in the 2023 draft class. So the mighty have fallen, essentially. He didn't have a very good year. And there were reports that I think there was a scandal that he was involved with, along with some attitude problems from what I heard. Obviously, I'm not there, so I can't. It's just all speculation on my part, but there's a reason he fell down to the 6th round when he was a first overall projected player. The talent is there. Let's see if he can put it all together.
Who is it? Stephon Diggs. He was a 5th round draft pick. He had character issues. He had a lot of injury concerns. Came out of Maryland, put up some good numbers for like 1 or 2 years, but wasn't really on anyone's radar. I think he was one that really kind of worked hard and just kind of developed. He became a good wide receiver. He was a good route runner, which was really testament to his work ethic and just figuring out that he was able to really become a superstar. So, there's opportunity there if they're able to do something. Sometimes it's really rare for undrafted free agents or these late drafted wide receivers to make a fantasy difference, but when they hit, man, they hit pretty good. So he could definitely be one of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you read the reports that now he's unhappy again?
Is he?
That's I don't know if it's, again, you don't ever know what you could hear, but I've heard reports again that he, because there was a stretch there he was kind of not getting the ball as much as he was the year before. So he was apparently unhappy again. So I'm just wondering. It seems like a guy that might be high maintenance, but when you feed him, he does produce. So it's hard to argue not to throw him the ball. But it is a team sport. You can't always be causing drama everywhere you go, which is what he did with the Vikings, which worked out for them because they shipped him off and drafted Justin Jefferson. But I'm hoping Keyshawn, maybe he could be that. The talent's there, but let's just see if he could put it all together mentally. But yeah, Roshan and Keyshawn are probably my favorite draft picks here in this 3rd round. So there's not really a pick to hate.
Yeah.
Right. So, because again, it is the 3rd round pick. We're pretty much finishing up here on time. I did want to get your thoughts on one other player, and that's Chase Brown, right? That the Bengals drafted. This is a guy I feel like has gotten on everybody's radar, obviously, and we knew this was going to happen, right? But we just hoped it'd be a guy like Zach Charbonnet or Kendre Miller or Tajay Spears or whatever that get drafted by the Bengals. But instead, it's Illinois running back Chase Brown, who I feel like didn't test well at the combine. But if you watch his tape, he is Joe Mixon-esque, like the way he runs the ball. But Joe Mixon did come out of college a better prospect, but he also did play on a much better team, a more recognizable team when it comes to Oklahoma versus Illinois. Are you investing? Are you trying to grab Chase Brown here in the 3rd round? I feel like where he was drafted is probably a good pick, maybe early 3rd now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think early 3rd is probably right. When you said that, I was like, I think early 3rd makes a lot of sense for him. He is a little bit of a sleeper. People haven't really noticed, haven't watched much tape on him, but he has a pretty cool backstory. If you ever get a chance to check it out, I think, him and I think he has a twin brother. They were both adopted and they both worked hard and they're able to get to college together. And he put up prolific numbers in college. So Chase Brown should be pretty interesting to see if, when you do that, when you have that college production, you hopefully are able to translate some of that into the pro level. And, with the Bengals backfield, I think right now they didn't re-sign Pirine. Mixon, they've asked them to restructure, which it kind of looks like he probably will, depending on how much they're asking for. There's a good chance that Chase Brown's going to get a chance to see the field. He caught some balls during his years. I think he had like 20, 30 catches in the game in his final year. So he does have some pass catching chops to him. There's no one really there in the backfield to share with other than I think Trevion Williams. So I do like Chase Brown early 3rd. I'd be willing to get him, or not reach, but like probably draft him there. And he may start creeping up higher as people kind of get closer to the year. I don't know, with Mixon, you never know if any of these charges, if anything that he always gets charged for sticks,
right?
If he gets suspended, then it's a wide open opportunity. So, pretty good flyer, pretty good opportunity in the 3rd round. I like him there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense for the Bengals to move on from Mixon, and we talked about it before with the allegations. But I think more importantly for what the Bengals organization would be more of like the cap hit that he's taking on the team, and they got to extend like three. Or they got to they're going to attempt to keep three pretty important players on that offense when it comes to Higgins, Burrow, and Chase. With I'm sure Chase and Burrow being the priorities over Higgins. So yeah, and we've seen it. You do not need a top level running back to win a Super Bowl. Like you're just not seeing teams do that. Like you just have to have a serviceable guy that gets the job done. So I mean, I get it. Like there are difference maker running backs, but I just don't think Joe Mixon's one of them. So why pay him like one? So if you look at the past 10 Super Bowl winners, the running backs on their team a lot of the running backs on those teams wouldn't be considered elite. I think I was looking at it once, arguing with somebody, and the last team to win a Super Bowl that had like a really top level running back was the Seahawks when they had Marshawn Lynch. Outside of that, it seems like they're just kind of mid-tier guys when it comes to real production and fantasy production. So, that's pretty much all of our time. We had a couple of viewers most of the day. Thank you, Michael, for asking the question, and Mr. Bakes a lot for tuning in. We'll get more viewers obviously as we get closer to the season, but now we're in that lull of before the draft and before the preseason. So there's we're just kind of filling in things to talk about with drafts mostly being especially dynasty drafts being the really only thing happening in the football or fantasy football world right now. So we
can start to talk about like different dynasty theories too as we go forward during the time.
Yeah.
It'll be a good opportunity to talk about strategy and all that. So
and there's still some free agents to potentially land at spots. There's still some guys that could get traded, even though it looks like D-Hop stay in. But who knows if the Broncos are going to keep their wide receiver. There's just a lot of things that could still happen this offseason for us to talk about, and a lot of different things especially when it comes to dynasty to talk about as well. So we'll stay busy with that, and then it'll ramp up more exciting topics, I think, once we get to the preseason, because that's when people really start to get the itch for fantasy football. So we will see you guys next week. We'll be back at our regular time at 5:00 next Thursday. So we'll see you guys then. Dima, anything else you want to say?
Oh, we're good. Thanks.
All righty. See you guys.